Today we are going to talk about better enrichment in Planet Zoo, or actually a way how we can have better enrichment mechanics in this game. So if you're interested, stick with me and let's get started. Okay, first things first, obviously in Planet Zoo we do have enrichment items and quite a bunch of them. So before we talk about new ways and mechanics, let's quickly talk about the enrichment in Planet Zoo, how it's categorized and how it's actually working. In the background you can see a wonderful otter habitat that is featuring some in-game enrichment mechanics, some, well, enrichment mechanics without actually being enrichment, and some totally non-functional fictional ones, which could be a good hint for the future of Planet Zoo. But first things first, we are going to start with the categories in the enrichment menu in the game. There is a specific habitat tab, and all of these items within the category enrichment do actually count towards the enrichment need of an animal. So if we click on an animal, first of all, you can see going through these tabs, you can see there's also a very high enrichment need in here. The animal needs a toy enrichment, a food enrichment, and can have also optionally an interspecies bonus, which also counts towards the enrichment. Now, if we look into the enrichment tab on here, you can see there are several toys listed down with which they can play. So first of all, they've got 2 feeders below water in which they can dive down and grab some fishies. We've got a mud bath, we've got a cardbox box, a submarine buoy, we've got a small bubble machine and a small ball, which is pretty colorful, as the game tells us. Now, we have the items in the game, as you can see. We've got a frozen block of fish and all these, so I'm not going to go through all of them. Some of these items are basically direct enrichment items with which they can play. So if we put down, for example, the block of frozen fruit, you can see that one over here. Gonna place it here, the block of fruit will rest there and animals can go there, chew on it, and they have a dedicated animation that is solely made for this specific enrichment items. Now then we also have some climbing structures, which, to be fair, they don't really count towards the enrichment tab of the animal, but clicking on it again, some of the animals actually have a need of climbing and so on. This one obviously does not really have any of those needs because I disabled them, but this one would have a deep water navigation need, so we've got the deep water, which is fulfilled. Other animals need to have a certain land area or a climbing area, and the climbing area is what you can generate with these logs over here. And this is already the first point we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes. I think the whole system about climbing is tackled in the wrong way, and I think we can have a huge improvement there if the way how the mechanic works would be changed. Now, talking about that later, let's first of all finish up the category of enrichment items. Now, lately, Frontier has started to bring in new enrichment items, meaning they have brought in a whole lot of more variety when it comes to the enrichment items. And I think the way they have done this is pretty dang good. So the original ones are more likely these. You've got a box, you've got a chew toy, you've got some bobbins and stuff like that. So these are all pretty single enrichment items that you can throw anywhere into your habitat. But lately, they've been adding stuff like the beaver pool, or something like the hammock, which I'm going to put here. They also introduced one of my favorite ones, even though if it is the biggest by far. Where is it? Dang, there you go. The goat climbing mountain, and we got also the scratch-in Scots pine, and also the scratch-in tree tamarind. So I'm gonna put this here. Now, what I want to make a point here, or I might want to make a point about these things, they become bigger and more natural. They become more a part of the habitat rather than a little toy to throw down. And this is something you would do anyways. This is very important for the game because it will allow us to create much more intricate and realistic looking habitats with a lot more joy to see the animals use their enrichment items. We also have stuff like the little pool for also the, I think it was the how are they called again? The dingo. The dingo pool is also one of the coolest ones in game because they keep playing in that one, in this little water pool over here, in which they run in, do some stuff and so on. Each individual item has a category of different animals that can use this toy, and this is where things start to become spicy. So let's talk about the first real point for better enrichment in this game. And this first point is multiple usage of enrichment items. If we take, for example, this goat climbing mountain, and we go into the menu again to check upon this one. So I'm gonna type in goat to find that real quick, and then you can see this is what we have in here. And which animals can actually use that? Well, it's actually the alpine ibex. That's it. That's it. So initially, there was also the goat in here that could use it, and the doll sheep, but in fact they can't. So everything is only on the ibex, and that, for me personally, is a huge disappointment, because you could do so much more with this specific enrichment item. Now, I really think it would be cool if Frontier would open up their enrichment items for more species. Yes, it would mean certain animals need a new animation for that, but in fact it would make would allow us to have so much more versatility with the available items. Just to name you a few examples. So this one over here, the goat mountain, is simply available for the ibex, which is really a downer. But there's another example I can show you, and that is the hammock, for example. If we click on the hammock, you can see this is the clouded leopard and the sun bear. So these are the two main animals that can use this thing. But in fact, if we could have this item and just change that slightly, maybe having an option to, yeah, for example, just use the hammock piece in the middle and then just have the animation run as soon as they get into the box of that one, it would make so much more sense. We could have basically all monkeys and apes use this one as well. We could basically have this as a hammock for, well, all climbing animals almost. If the clouded leopard can use it, so why can't the big cats use it? That's something I really wish Frontier would go in and just, you know, open up upon that, because this is really something I certainly believe is super important for the game to evolve into a much more versatile and free way of making enrichment happen. But yeah, that's the first point. Let's move on to the second, shall we? Alright, so the second point is climbing as a whole. You can see a wonderful climbing rack over here I got installed for my red pandas. Now, they can somehow use it. I'm just going to quickly show you how they can use it. If I find my little fellows over here, there's one, hit H and see the traversable area. You can see they can maneuver this thing quite nicely. If we look into its needs, well, actually we have to disable the needs first of all, so they're actually enabled, so you can see that one. So I'm just going to go to the default preset, apply that one, so we can have a better view at that. Let's just click that one again and then go back into the terrain needs. You can see they have by far enough climbing area in here. So here's my point. The job is done as soon as you have enough area, but that doesn't mean that these animals would climb more or less. As soon as you've hit a certain amount of space in which they can climb, which is a combination of airborne pieces and also areas where they can climb with these green indicators that there is a climbing frame, basically you have your job done. And I think this is a little bit too little. So I think it would be really cool if the enrichment value of climbing does also take into account how much an animal is airborne or not. So take the koala, for example. I remember that when the koala was introduced to the game, they didn't climb for me for over a month until it was fixed. I know it has been a little bit of an issue, but still, till today, koalas for me roam around quite a lot on the ground, and I have to really make sure that my layout of the habitat is clever enough so that they have to climb all the time. I really think it would be good to have an indicator how much time an animal spends climbing or even inside of trees or whatever. By the way, remember trees. We will talk about trees and climbing a bit more in a point that I want to stress later on in this video. But really, I do think that everything with the climbing is just so good that we can really have an option to make them climb more and just use the climbing more. A second point about the climbing is give us control about what is climbable and what not. So the issue is, I'm just going to quickly show you. You can go to Habitat and go to climbable options, and then you get all the pieces that are climbable in this game. However, if you go to construction and you set the filter and you go to the property and you say climbable, oh yeah, you get a bunch of pieces that are actually climbable as well. Now the game has to calculate all these people, what is going on with me? All these pieces to be climbable. Now this is great because it offers a huge freedom for us, but on the other hand, it's complicated because either we don't want it to be climbable, or we don't know exactly if it is climbable for a certain animal or not, or how we would actually experience some glitching and stuff connected with it. So I think it would be good to rearrange all the pieces, and if it is for me, you can even duplicate that into this menu to have everything that is enrichment-wise climbable in one menu, and everything from another menu isn't. So let's say you build something, every piece in that menu by default is non-climbable, and once you use the pieces, and again, it might be the same pieces from the same menu, they are climbable by default, and obviously each piece can have a switch on its own to enable and disable the climbing. That would give us a huge control over where they climb and where not, and this way we could also introduce a factor by how much animals want to climb or not. And again, if we have a factor slider for making animals age less and more and less, it would be really neat to have the chance to have that control over climbing as well. So that said, let's move on to the next one. All right, next up is species-specific enrichment. Now, I talked about the point that many of the enrichment items can be shared across multiple species, but there are also a lot of enrichment items that are very specific for a single specimen or like a single species, and I think that would be great to have these hero enrichment items more in the game. I have some important things that I did in the past that are, you know, mostly non-functional, but I did, for example, a kind of a zipline feeding enrichment item for the cheetah, but I also did other stuff like slides for otters, for example, climbing frames, as I've shown you, for the red panda, and various more, which I will idle in the background so you can see these non-functioning things I have. But the point I'm making here is that I really would love to see these enrichment items used more across the game for these species, because we have got so many things that would be absolutely amazing. And I'm going to put also some images in, like for example, one of the things that I really miss in the game is the chill animation of a big cat in a tree. Like, we do have a lie down animation on a log for the big cats, however it's nowhere near the kind of very iconic loose hanging that a cat makes on a branch like that. And I think this would be also a super simple implementation in terms of what kind of pieces you could offer. So I see like maybe one or two dead branches and one or two trees, pretty much exactly like the scratch tree works. Like, take an existing tree of the game and just bake a prefab animation into that for big cats. And since we have so many big cats in the game, even though it's a species-specific enrichment item, it could be used across multiple animals in the game, so giving players a lot more variety for their different habitats. And I think this would be absolutely perfect, because that's something that we are missing quite a lot, and just making it overall a better experience for people with the enrichment items for each individual animal in the game. One more thing we have to talk about is the underwater enrichment. At this point, we don't really have underwater enrichment other than the feeding station and the brand new submarine buoy tool. I just showed you some pictures in the background now of real enrichment items for underwater, and I just think to keep this segment of the video super short, we just need more. We just need more underwater enrichment. Fun fact, we have a lot of enrichment items already in the game that would already work underwater. We just have to have the animation as soon as it's in the water. That's it. So let's move on to the next one. Last but not least, we have to talk about feeding enrichment or food enrichment. Yes, we have a couple of those, as you've seen at the beginning. Yes, we've got some dog bowls and, you know, stuff like that, skittle feeders and prey sand and whatever. However, and I think this is something I really believe has to be changed in a bigger way, only than just adding some items or not. Simply because I think the idea to have it as an enrichment is great, but I think some of them are better to be held as a food piece in general, like feeding. At the moment in this game, we have a problem because the animals' feeding system by the keeper is really mandatory that the keeper goes into the habitat and then just like, you know, changes all these things. We don't have automatic feeding, we don't have anything like that, we don't have things in the fences where they can slide food in. And by the way, while I'm saying that, in the background you will now see footage from Mr. Lighter. He's made a video a couple of months ago with some custom-made feeding stations. He did some brilliant research on that, and he has some amazing pieces that you can also grab from the workshop, by the way. But also his videos are great, so give him a like if you do enjoy this stuff, because I think this is one of the points that brought me making this video. Now, I think it's really important to split the feeding from the actual enrichment to kind of categorize that in a better way, and then also make this go towards the actual nutrition rating of the animal rather than only the food enrichment. And I think it would be nice to have a specific food enrichment as it is right now with the pieces that grant enrichment as well. Like as I said in the last couple parts of the video, there are specific food enrichment pieces, but you know, I really think we need more different feeding things in the game, just like, I don't know, little gates, little doors, little sliders and all that kind of stuff that can grant food access for the animals. And I really think that would be a good way of splitting it. However, that's it for the last point, but it's very important that we talk about all of the points I mentioned today in a little conclusion. So let's head over to that one. And here we go. The conclusion of today's video is that we do have a pretty solid enrichment system in this game. Planet Zoo is a brilliant game when it comes to enrichment pieces and just having all these animations. But, you know, as we strive for a even better game, these were my points to improve this. And just to keep it very short, I think the first focus should be to make the available enrichment items usable for more animals that kind of would use them in real life as well. Even though I know this would mean to add some animations to those animals as well, it would kind of increase the amount of enrichment pieces we have by a lot. The second thing, which I think is very important, is to change the way how climbing works as an enrichment versus the enrichment pieces. So climbing shouldn't be something that they do every 20 minutes as an animation and then be happy with it as soon as a certain square meter amount is reached. I think climbing has to be really made according to the needs of the animal. So if we have an airborne animal that spends most of their life in trees, the habitat has to be adjusted to that. And if we don't deliver this, the enrichment is bad for those animals. So we don't need an enrichment item for that, but we need a new way of kind of judging if climbing need is fulfilled or not, and then really make the habitat available for them to be climbed all over and just make climbing a thing for them. Really important stuff. But the most important thing, I guess, is that we look into individual species enrichment items as a huge improvement according to what they do with it. So for example, making sure that, you know, we have some iconic animations from the big cats, we have more underwater enrichment, a very important part, and also we do need a lot more enrichment focus when it comes to food. One thing is the enrichment for food, but the other thing is actually the feeding itself. I think these points taken together really show you that with a couple of small changes, I think the enrichment can become a lot better in general, but also that there's a huge room for improvement when it comes to the pieces in general. As I said in the second part of the video, I'm a big fan of the new enrichment pieces that Frontier came up lately with. I really do love the fact that they are bigger, they are more integrated as like the big rock enrichment. Even though it's gigantic, I love the way you can implement that into your habitat. It blends in with the full rocks, which I love. It's recolorable, it's flexicolor. So really love this idea to make it all a bit more natural and integrated into the game. So big fan of that, and I really hope Frontier continues on doing that. I hope you enjoyed these points today, because I really tried to bring this together. I love enrichment as a whole for the game and just in general, and I hope you guys agree to a certain extent to these points. If not, let me know in the comments down below what you don't agree with, and also please let me know in the comments down below what you think about enrichment in general, what you like, what you don't like, and just keep keep putting stuff in the comments. This is always important. Frontier is most likely reading this as well, so let go. Just type down whatever you want, and I really hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much. If you like this content and want to see more of these videos as well, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That helps you to stay updated, and I really hope to welcome you in the next one. So until then, have a good time. Thank you so much for listening, and goodbye.